Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're playing Our Life. Now when I recorded this, I had only played my first run, which made this a very long one the first time. And this time it's not so long. So without further ado, let's hop into Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon. The sky above was still dark, though lightened by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of a lazy day you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity as both your family and Coves prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street just outside your house was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. He glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. The prospect of the trip had been mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed like he was dealing with it as best he could. Your family joined them, probably added to the muddled emotions. Your parents sure weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Coast spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the line, plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while helping to load everything, and then you had to admit that while it was really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug.
Let's go.
Move it or lose it, kiddo. Mom busted past the cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water in the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. You could relate to Ma. It was too early. You personally were as raring to go as your mom. You felt like you were a middle ground between the two. I'm not a morning person. I work a night shift because I'm not a morning person. It is 1:46 in the morning. I'm not a morning person. Well, 1:46 in the middle of the night because I don't like morning. I go to bed at 6 a.m. as the sun is rising, and I sleep till 3 when the sun starts to get lower. Too early. You yawned and rubbed your eyes, still sleepy from the early morning wake-up call. The air outside was still damp from dew that helped make your day a bit more alert. And at the end of the chain came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started, her rattling off critiques adding some level of normalcy to everything going on.
Ugh.
I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Ari is the youngest, and I'll never fall asleep in that loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft for both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for the younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with the answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning against the side of the RV. The trip plans had been nailed down prior. The sleeping arrangements included Elizabeth still held onto her objections with them. There was the main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. In the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed. Kara was on the couch, and father and son intended to sleep on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. You're fine with the arrangement. You were excited to sleep in the loft. Sharing the bed with your parents was going to be awkward. You were looking forward to sleeping with your moms. You weren't too happy either, but it didn't make offense. You thought it was unfair that Cove had to sleep on the floor. Loft. It would be a new experience for you and sounded kind of cool. Alright, you lot. Does everybody have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. At the word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house. Her bed hair had hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a smile, settling her hands on her hips. How about you, Ari? Do you have all your clothes packed? Toiletries, deodorant, floss, anything else you can think of? We have to. We're not sure. Springing up the stairs to the bathroom, you grabbed your toothbrush from the bedside, from the from beside the sink before heading back down. You were glad you weren't reminded to grab it after having left it out to use this morning. It would have been embarrassing if you couldn't brush your teeth for the next few days. Your mom was still there waiting with a knowing expression as you walked out again. Got everything now, Ari? Yeah. With a few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip: clothes, pillow, blanket, usually day-to-day gear for most people. You also had the most important things, such as portable gaming. The drive to the Redwood National Park would take an entire day, uh, entire day one way, so you wanted to make sure you had a way to entertain yourself while traveling there and back. Um, some things to read. Yeah, you had packed one before of your old favorites and a new one you'd never tried to read before. You'd have plenty of time for both of them on such a long drive. I like pictures. It was just a little pocket camera you had gotten from your mom's, but you couldn't miss the opportunity to take a few new snaps. Um, MP3 player. With so much time going to be spent in the driving car, you want to make sure you'd be able to have some music to put on. And that's everything. Hey, let me take that for you, Ari. I'll stow it in the RV. There's a few spots left it'll fit. You let Kyra take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kyra and Cliff seemed to have the most energy of anyone. They were finishing packing the suitcases away while your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartment of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove, you could tell that they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away anywhere together. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV, bag slung over her shoulder, and you were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole ordeal now. Usually, she wasn't one to exit the confines of her room unless it was for TV, food, or to leave her family behind to be with friends. You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 others would be too much for her, but it was a nice surprise. You suppose any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind. Gove had been pretty quiet so far. More than anything, he seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. You were excited for the trip. You weren't very excited. You were eager to get to the destination. You kissed about the RV. You didn't feel much either way. Destination. You'd been looking up the park online and couldn't wait to explore everything it had to offer. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Everyone piled in the RV and it was officially time to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kira were all huddled in the front trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out of the driver's area, leaving Cove's dad to it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt like you could finally relax now too. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine in the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff climbed out of the driver's seat and Mom took over. Ma was sitting shotgun, giving Ma a quick tutorial on the controls as it was her first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. You're making good progress. Yeah, maybe you should take a nap in the back for a while. That was a long haul you just did. I know you're on less sleep than usual. Cliff waved a hand, that trademark grin of his slipping into place.
Nah.
I don't need sleep. I've still got a few miles left in the old tank. He flexed his arms, showing off his muscles to drive to the point about how resilient he was. Home and Kyra rolled her eyes up in amusement. Dad, everybody has to sleep. Cove groaned at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair.
So?
Are you going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging up in the loft above the driving compartment. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach, and she tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Kira laughed lightheartedly.
Don't worry about that.
Lucky for all of us, we have enough adults to cover the shifts today. You won't be driving again until tomorrow. You stayed quiet. You shook your head at the ribbing. Phew, that's relief. Just enough time to write my last will and testament. We shouldn't gang up on the poor guy. It's not his driving I'm worried about. Not you too. The rest of the group laughed while Cliff patted, and you gave him an apologetic shrug. Mom then shouted back her seat to join the conversation as playfully smile on her lips. Well, I'm worried about this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks like as though it was built in the early 90s. It must be older than some of the occupants. That's just the aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old, I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kura wrinkled her nose and thought.
Hey!
Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed, and you held onto the ladder to the loft and kept your balance. You felt something graze the top of your head as a weight settled on your red hair. When you tilted your chin up to carefully look at your head as the rustling of a bag of chips and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on the top of your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. You took a handful. Reaching up, you scooped some chips. After that, the weight of the package left your scalp. You happily bunched away as the conversation continued, and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by with the group of you chanting, playing games, and passing the time together before finally arriving at the park and settling up for the night. Ma was closing the window while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours after you arrived at your destination and found a spot to park for the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were, Cove having completely fallen asleep curled up in the passenger seat. He must have done so while Kira was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kira herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Holden needed to sleep despite his claims. You followed your moms into the back room and closed the door behind you before crawling into the bed between them. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing.
Good night.
Good night. Get a good rest, Ari. We've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow.
That's fantastic.
I'm looking forward to the bush walk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There will be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake for a little while longer while your moms whispered about the park and forest in general, with the sound of their voices in the background. Eventually, you nodded off to sleep. The next morning, you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. You had slept well. You had slept okay. You had slept terribly. You slept well. You fell asleep before you knew it and had woken up rested. Meanwhile, Ma whined a bit about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own as the others were doing the same thing. Cove was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair, and tucked up his legs every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything to the point where you had stopped listening to them altogether. You knew that you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but the look of the backpacks that were packed and ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from them. It didn't take much longer until you all exited the RV and bustled and headed into the Redwood National Park. Wow. Cove had his head tilted up towards the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as he took in the massive trunk on either side of you. You knew that the redwood trees here were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person.
Come on.
Smile, you two. You spun in time for Kira to snap a picture of you and Cove together before she pointed the camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protest that she should just enjoy the moment. Your parents were walking behind the group. Meanwhile, Mom and Ma telling some information she had read about the park in the brochure. Ma listened happily while looking around and taking the sights every now and then, asking questions or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come and work here as a tour guide if you know so much about the place. Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. You were in awe of the redwood trees. You were fascinated by the sensation around you. You were in a good mood. You weren't impressed as the others. You were embarrassed that the adults were being so touristy. Trees. Surrounding you on either side of the enormous tree shot up into the sky, and the sunlight peeked through the canopy, speckling the path in front of you. The sheer size of the redwoods made you feel like a tiny ant bustling along through the forest. Adults had decided on some casual nature walk rather than any serious hiking. You strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she fell into place between the two of you, and immediately you could tell by her expression she was going to say something taunting. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happening, but now I'm not so sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove ignored her completely and continued walking along. Just watch. Next year, they'll be talking about their next amazing idea. She put on a fake voice deeper than her own. We should sell both our houses and move in together. Think of how much we'd save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. He supposed that he was used to it by this point. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family just because we live across the street from each other. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered toward you. Maybe one day we will be related, legally anyway. She said as though she was a gossipy old lady. I don't know why me and Ari always get paired up for those kinds of jokes. There's no law saying you have to marry someone your own age. Anybody could say me and you are the ones who will get married one day.
In your dreams.
Me in your dreams. You told her to cut it out, Ari. Cove has a point. It wasn't a great comment. I'll marry you, Cove. You ignored Elizabeth. You were embarrassed. He could just as easily marry you. Well, actually, you need two people's consent for marriage, and there is no way I'd ever agree to that. Really? Never? That's breaking my heart. Elizabeth poked out her tongue at both of you, giving you a sour look. She walked ahead, obviously not getting the response she was looking for, and you and Cove swapped amused looks. The day continued on with plenty to see and experience. You passed out a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said that would have to wait for another trip. There was a little stream during the walk that you sat beside and set out for a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit and sandwiches and chips. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. You were glad you got to do this in the end. You were disappointed to only have one day in the park. You thought this long trip wasn't worth one day here and more fun hanging out in the V. You hadn't had a good time with this trip. Disappointment. I would want to stay there longer. There was so much here, and you felt like you needed a whole week, maybe even more, to experience it all. You sighed quietly to yourself, wondering if you'd get the chance to come back. Your group made it back to the camp just as the sun was setting in the sky and stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it. Mostly, you traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner. Then afterwards, you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. It was nice to have the space to yourselves after the cramped journey there. While Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. Let's hang out with Cove a little bit. Well, let's take a load off. We got some time. You took a seat on the sofa while Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knee. There was an uncomfortable silence for a few moments until you asked Cove if he had seen any wildlife during the walk. He talked about a doe and the fawn and he had spotted between the trees. The two of you made light conversation for a while, and it wasn't so bad. You got to share the experience from the day with him too. He seemed to be happy to hear them. The parents all arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip spent together. Bedtime arrived with a blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom and your dad finally your mom did a final round to be sure nothing had been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be a need for all of them to get up. Now was the time to check if you had left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you hadn't it all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading back to the room while you climbed up to the loft. Co finally got situated below in the previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you'd be back in your own bed at home. You enjoyed this mini adventure. You thought the trip had been okay. You felt the trip was a waste of time. It hadn't been a good time. Mini adventure. Let's go. It was short, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. It didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kerr to drift up. They were asleep now. You poked your head out from the loft and blinked through the dark. Cove's parents were indeed out. Cove looked to be staring at the ceiling. You slipped back into the loft before getting caught. Yeah, you went to try to sleep. You decided you'd have fun quietly. You buried yourself under the blanket and pulled out your game console as silently as possible. While hidden away in your own little spot, you spent not sure how long getting some extra time to enjoy yourself. But at some point, your eyes grew heavy and you gently drifted off into a deep sleep. Then you woke up the next morning and it was the rumble of RV as if it had traveled along the journey home. Still blinking sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the loft to glimpse at what was happening. Cove was sitting with his mom on the couch, the two of them talking quietly. He must have noticed you moving around up there, because Cove's ocean blue eyes snapped yours and he gave you a smile. Morning, Ari. Good morning, Cove. Soon your moms and Elizabeth emerged from their rooms, dressed and ready for the day to travel. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Kara suggested a few different traveling games she used to play with Cove when he was younger, and you all had a great time competing against each other. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling into your own bed for the last few days away. Everyone else must have been feeling the same because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV would wait until the morning. Once home again, you went straight into your room and dropped onto your bed, shoes and all. You were happy to be in your own bed. It felt weird to be alone. It felt good to be alone. You wish you were still on the trip. Happy. Bed. Yes. You stretched out with a smile on your face and enjoyed having the space all to yourself. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow life would go on like normal. Okay, because we didn't have the romantic things going on, that was much shorter than it usually is. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to hit like and subscribe and come back because we're almost done. Yeah, that's the last step for this one, and then we're gonna go into the next step, and that'll be fun. More content to play for you guys. So I hope you have a good day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye bye.